Welcome back, Scissor Sisters. When we last hung out, we left off with the murder of Charles Vallow, the first murder in the systematic slaughter of Lori's family. In addition to the known murders, there were 2 more attempted murders, one of which was a failed murder attempt on Tammy Daybell. The other was Lori's niece's ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux. Had media outlets and law enforcement not intervened when they did, there's no telling how far these 2 would have gone. Before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to Robert and his team over at Timeless Mysteries. I got the opportunity to collab on a live stream with Robert recently, and everyone was so wonderful to work with. Our live stream is available for viewing on Timeless Mysteries, and I will be posting shorts from our time together on my channel as well, so be sure to look out for that. This episode will explore the remaining murders and subsequent trials for both Chad and Lori. Zulema Pastines provided most of the missing pieces of the puzzle itself, but her knowledge came at the price of a plea deal for her involvement in the case. At any point in time, any one of the 7 gatherers could have come forward with information, especially after the case went public. Yet not a single woman did. The other 5 members of the group would also testify at Chad's and Lori's trials, but they would be a lot less forthcoming. Was it brainwashing or was it embarrassment? I mean, these women were mothers themselves. How could they possibly justify sitting by and watching this case play out on the news and not speak out and say anything? I am currently working on the last granny square that I need to make my daughter's granny squares overall. And then you guys get to watch me piece it all together. It actually struck me this morning while I was thinking about how everything is going to come together that I actually did not make a solid plan for attaching the legs to the body. So you will probably see a lot of frogging today. Sewing is probably one of my least favorite things in crochet though. So if you hate sewing and crochet mashed together, you should drop a comment below and let me know what you prefer. Okay, now that recap is done, let's finish this story. August 2019 was relatively quiet for the Daybell and Vallow families. Chad and Zulema were in communication without Lori as the middleman now. The only thing of note during the month of August is that Zulema and Alex went on their first official date, and Chad told Zulema that JJ Vallow would die young and be reincarnated as Colby's son. We briefly touched on that in the last episode, but honestly, there's not much more to say about it. September, on the other hand, was a busy month for Lori, and in the absolute worst way possible. It was at this point that Lori dropped the bombshell of moving away with the kids. The announcement seemingly came out of nowhere, and the move was over so quickly that there was hardly time to say goodbye. Which kinda begs the question, how long had Lori been planning this move? Before she had Alex kill Charles? After? Was it pre-planned at all, or was it a manic decision by a delusional woman? Maybe somewhere in between? Lori was smart enough to plan ahead to an extent, but she was also incredibly sloppy and careless, so it's hard to say. Regardless, Lori explained her decision as a life or death situation that left little room for argument. Janice and Summer, Lori's mother and sister, just in case you didn't remember, were willing to believe that Lori was in danger from Charles's family because of the frantic texts that he had sent about Lori's erratic behavior leading up to his murder. Lori claimed she couldn't tell anyone where she was going because just telling her mother where she is could put her and her kids at risk. Both women still believed Lori was an exemplary mother at this point in time. They said as much in an interview with 48 Hours where they praised her highly and made her sound saintly. Of course, there was no threat to Lori's life or the lives of her kids, not from outside forces at least. The reason Lori wanted to move to Idaho was to be closer to her boyfriend, Chad, who is still married, by the way. Colby and Janice both said that they remember Tylee crying hard because she didn't want to leave. The poor girl was probably so confused and so scared. And JJ, with his advanced autism, this is possibly the worst possible choice a loving mother would make just 2 months after the loss of her husband and the father of her children. But then again, calling Lori a loving mother past 2017 is more than a stretch, if we're being honest. Colby, tired of his mother's drama, heartbroken by recent events, and stressed from his wife's high-risk pregnancy, decided to distance himself from his mother and siblings to focus on his own growing family. Kelsey heavily influenced this decision because she didn't think Lori was stable enough to be in their lives and was acting like a madwoman. Gods, why did no one listen to Charles and Kelsey? This is just another choice that hangs like a dark cloud over Colby. He's not too much older than I am, and he's already lost most of his family. He and his wife have made it a point to make sure Tylee's and JJ's memories don't die. Colby regularly tells his children about the love their aunt and uncle would have had for them. Shortly before the move, about 3 weeks or so, Lori gave JJ's service dog, Bailey, back to her trainer. Bailey had been specifically trained to keep JJ from wandering out of the house at night. It's practically unheard of to rehome your task-specific trained service dog. Summer Shiftlet swears that JJ didn't even like the dog and that Lori only put up with the dog because Charles loved it. Which, regardless, it's kinda heartless to rehome your son's service dog? I mean, really? By the first week of September, Lori, Tylee, JJ, and Alex had relocated to some townhouses in Rexburg, Idaho. Alex, Chad, and Lori had tried to convince Zulema to come with them, but she was hesitant. She had only been on one date with Alex, and her entire life was in Arizona, to include her own children. Zulema is probably only alive because of that decision. Lori invited the rest of the 7 gatherers to move with them, but only her niece took Lori up on the offer. Melanie Boudreau, who was going through a divorce at this time, moved to Idaho within the next month or so. Part of the deal of moving to Idaho was that you had to leave everything behind. Husbands, children, friends, and all other connections had to be left behind for the Lightworkers to join the cult leaders in the promised land of Rexburg, Idaho. Basically, the dodo birds were asking Lori's friends to follow them as Jesus's disciples followed him, leaving everything behind with the promise of an exalted position in the next life. Obviously, that's a huge ask and triggered alarm bells for 2 members of the group whose names I, quite frankly, didn't bother to learn. These 2 women distanced themselves from the group after this because the illusion was beginning to slip, but they still hadn't officially left the cult entirely yet. Based on this little tidbit of information, it makes sense why Melanie Boudreau was the only one to move with Lori. With active divorce proceedings, she had little reason to stay behind in Arizona. Despite not being the beneficiary to Charles's life insurance policy, Lori was still making over $4,000 a month from JJ's Social Security payments and Tylee's child support. Tylee's child support payments from Joseph Ryan were supposed to be deposited into her personal checking account for her to access with her own debit card. However, in the early days of the move, the details of Tylee's account changed, and the funds were now being transferred into an account that Tylee didn't have access to. Obviously, it was Lori's new bank account. This is how you know Tylee's murder was definitely pre-planned, at least to an extent. Especially because Lori had informed the 7 gatherers that Tylee had been possessed by a dark spirit named Hillary just a month prior. On September 8th, 2019, the family visited Yellowstone National Park together, which would have been a great way to get to know your new surroundings, had it not been for what happened immediately after the visit. Tylee, JJ, and Alex were photographed together on a bridge, smiling broadly, presumably by Lori. Knowing that Alex would kill Tylee for Lori after this is chilling. To this day, nobody knows if Tylee left that park alive. Messages would continue to be sent from Tylee's phone after this date, particularly around her birthday. However, Tylee's Aunt Summer and brother Colby admitted later that the messages they received from Tylee after September 8th seemed off. Her language, punctuation, emoji usage, etc., it was all wrong. But of course, no one dug any deeper into that beyond asking Tylee if she was mad at them. Once again, it's Lori Vallow and the case of how nobody fucking asked. Zulema visited Alex in Rexburg sometime in mid-September. She claims she remembers asking Lori where her daughter is, but apparently only received cryptic answers. Lori allegedly told Zulema that Tylee needed to be freed and told her not to ask any more questions about it. Zulema went back to Arizona without having seen Tylee or asking any more questions, because why would she? Everything Lori told her was law at this point. But come on, Zulema. There's a reason you received full immunity in exchange for your testimony. And I'm willing to bet it's because you knew Tylee was dead when you visited. Ugh. This case makes me so mad because so many people had the opportunity to say something, and every single person turned the other cheek. All 7 gatherers were complicit in the murder of 4 people and 1 attempted murder. Amazingly, though, no one was suspicious yet. I guess when you've spent years around Lori's specific brand of crazy, you become desensitized to a point. Whenever anyone would ask where Tylee was or why they hadn't heard from her, Lori would tell folks that Tylee had gone off to college and was busy with her new life, or she was just being a moody teenager. That seemed to be a good enough answer for everyone, unfortunately. Melanie says she remembers seeing JJ that morning. He had gone to school that day and came home as usual. He spent time with his mom before being shuffled off to his Uncle Alex's apartment so the women could record their podcast. After Alex picked up his nephew, Lori apparently went on a tirade about how JJ had been possessed by a demon and was already a zombie. Part of JJ's advanced autism involved severe instances of echolalia and uncontrollable aggression. Melanie claims that prior to being picked up by Alex, JJ had climbed on top of the fridge, knocked down some religious idolatry, and yelled about the devil. And that's the reason that Lori called Alex to pick him up, allegedly. But I mean, what was Lori expecting to happen? The kid's father and sister died right in front of him. His service dog had been given away, and Lori hadn't given the kid his medication in months. The poor child was stressed and scared. Melanie and David both remember Alex carrying a sleeping JJ home, with JJ's head resting on Alex's shoulder. Alex then supposedly tucked his nephew into bed and left. JJ had worn red pajamas to bed that night. What Lori's guests thought was a tender moment between nephew and uncle was very likely a hitman carrying his latest victim inside to cover his tracks. Have you noticed how Lori has yet to get her hands dirty? Lori unenrolled JJ from school the following day, claiming that she'd be homeschooling her son from now on. The following day, September 24th, would have been Tylee's 17th birthday. Instead of spending the day with her cheerful daughter over cake and well wishes, Lori was answering texts from friends and family sending well wishes to Tylee for her birthday. Most communication from Tylee's phone would stop after this, though Summer Shiftlet claims to have received a text from Lori in early October. Regardless, everyone was in agreement at this point that something wasn't quite right with Tylee's text messages. On October 2nd, 2019, Melanie Boudreau's soon-to-be ex-husband got a nasty surprise after work. According to Brandon Boudreau, he noticed an unusual car parked near his house. As he pulled into his driveway, a shot popped off and shattered the back window of his vehicle. Brandon ducked to avoid being shot. He He jumped out of the vehicle to confront the gunman with his own firearm, and as he did, he recognized Alex's black Jeep as it sped away. He was able to write down the license plate number and provide it to Gilbert, Arizona police. However, the police would have a hard time tracking Alex down because he was already on his way back to Idaho. To put it in perspective for you, Alex was in Rexburg, Idaho on September 24th, had driven to Gilbert, Arizona by October 2nd, and was then back in Rexburg, Idaho by October 8th. The drive from Rexburg to Gilbert is 924 miles and takes 14 hours to drive if you don't stop at all. The man was busy and on the road basically nonstop. On October 9th, 2019, the first attempt on Tammy Daybell's life was made. Tammy pulled into her driveway after a day at her secretarial job. As she got out of the car, a masked gunman ambushed her and waved a gun in her face. She screamed loudly for her husband and dashed for the backyard. Tammy was unhurt that day, and the black Jeep that had ambushed her sped off. Who have we met that has a black Jeep? Does this sound familiar? Even if the gunman had managed to shoot Tammy that day, she would have been relatively unharmed. The gun used to threaten Tammy turned out to be a painted paintball gun. She definitely would have been hurt getting shot at close range with a paintball, but it would have been far from a fatal blow. I think using a disguised paintball gun was an interesting choice. To me, this indicates that Alex's conscience was starting to weigh on him, and he didn't want to follow Lori's crazy plans anymore. And it's kind of strange that killing a stranger was his line in the sand when he had already killed his blood niece. Regardless, do you think Chad was pissed that Alex didn't murder his wife that day? After Tammy's murder attempt, Chad came to the Lightworkers with some news. He had received divine instruction on how to perform a successful casting every time, no matter how strong the inhabiting dark worker or demon was. However, this knowledge came with the price of a life, meaning the possessed would now die every time. Honestly, everyone who had been deemed possessed before now had died as a consequence of their casting, so I don't really know why it was some prophetic revelation. Regardless, this revelation became official Lightworker doctrine by the end of the night. Zulema happened to be visiting Lori in Idaho at the time of Tammy's assault. Zulema testified that the group performed a casting for Tammy the night of October 9th over Zoom, but no one in the group knew about the attempted murder. After the casting, Lori took a phone call and became absolutely livid with whoever was on the other end. Lori left the room for the call, and she was seething when she came back. Zulema said she had never seen Lori that angry before. Allegedly, Lori spent the rest of the night muttering about how that fucking idiot can't do anything by himself. It's obvious now that Lori was referring to Alex and his 2 failed murders. While the first attempt on Tammy's life was unsuccessful, the second attempt wasn't. On October 19th, 2019, Garth Daybell, one of Chad and Tammy's sons, heard a thud come from his parents' bedroom. He rushed in to find his mother dead on the floor. In the months leading up to her death, Tammy's family claimed her health had begun to deteriorate, so they assumed she died of natural causes. However, Tammy's friends claimed she was training for a marathon at the time and was in great physical health overall. The 5 children decided to not have Tammy autopsied and moved ahead with her funeral. Chad's children are adamant that he barely spoke as they made the decision to skip the autopsy. Her death certificate officially read as death by natural causes, with the coroner suspecting a pulmonary embolism. Literally the next day, Chad moved into Lori's townhouse. Chad and Tammy had been married for 29 years when she died. Her body is still at the mortuary while this dung beetle is moving in with his mistress. He didn't even wait a full freaking day. And yet, his children defended this, saying while it was disrespectful, it's not illegal and doesn't implicate him in any murders. Of course, they said that in an interview before the bodies were found on the Daybell property. Zulema and Alex officially started dating on October 31st. Zulema said she often questioned her relationship with Alex. Sometimes she got the feeling that they were only together because Chad said they should be. However, she says she also couldn't deny the moments of connection they shared. Would a man who didn't care for her tell her about the zombies he killed? If he didn't love her, why would he confess his fears to her? To say that their relationship was complicated is an understatement. On November 5th, 2019, just 17 days after Tammy's death, Chad was marrying Lori in her paradise of Kauai. Honestly, I think they might have convinced the 7 gatherers to move with them if they had set Hawaii up as the new Jerusalem. Probably would have gotten more followers from the large Mormon community there too. The couple told no one about their plans to elope other than a cryptic statement to one of Chad's children. Chad had told one of his kids that he'd be married again soon enough. And, yeah, buddy. 2.5 weeks is pretty soon. Still, the Daybell children said that this was in poor taste and socially unacceptable, but doesn't implicate him in any murders. Lori and Chad posted their wedding photos on Facebook, which is how the news was broken to both families. Everyone was hit with a mix of betrayal, shock, and anger over the news. Even so, both Lori's and Chad's families were willing to find ways to defend them. Chad and Lori would spend the few months they'd get as a married couple flying back and forth from Idaho and Hawaii. During Lori's visits back to Idaho, she was seen on CCTV footage leaving a storage unit an unusual amount of times. The storage locker ended up containing the possessions of Tylee and JJ. Love wasn't just in the air for Tweedledee and Tweedledum, though. Alex and Zulema got engaged on November 7th, 2019. They had only been on a total of 3 dates at this point, but I suppose that matters less when you've known each other for years anyway. After her engagement and Lori's wedding, Zulema picked the newlyweds up from an Arizona airport to spend some time with them before the murderous duo flew back to Idaho together. Supposedly, Chad and Lori were all over each other and grossly physical in the back seat while Zulema was driving. As adults in their late 40s, early 50s, that's pretty embarrassing and gross, honestly. During the ride back to the airport, Zulema asked where JJ was. Lori got annoyed and said he was with his grandmother, Kay Woodcock, in Louisiana. Everyone was still working with the assumption that Tylee was in college, and that's why she wasn't with Lori in Hawaii. Once again, Zulema didn't press any further. Lori Vallow and the case of how nobody fucking asked. Someone was finally starting to get suspicious in late November. Kay Woodcock had been trying to contact her grandson since the beginning of September. Despite being unable to care for him, the Woodcocks were active members of JJ's life. After 2.5 months of no contact with JJ or Lori, Kay decided to call in a welfare check for her grandson on November 26, 2019. When police arrived at Lori's Rexburg townhouse, Lori opened the door and allowed them inside to look around. As the local police checked her home, Lori explained that her son was with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona. She passed off her lack of communication with Kay Woodcock as a family feud. No one was looking for Tylee yet. She's been dead for almost 3 months by now, and no one was wondering why she hadn't visited for Thanksgiving. While the police questioned Lori, Chad was around back calling Melanie Gibb and telling her not to answer the door when the police showed up in a few hours. He offered no other explanation and hung up the phone. Melanie was not very happy with this lie, and for once, someone told the truth. When police came by Melanie's house later that week, she told them point blank that she didn't have JJ and hadn't seen him since her last visit to Idaho. As far as she knew, JJ was with Kay Woodcock. This information brought police full circle, and they figured that someone had to be lying. And with the information available, it didn't look like Melanie Gibb or Kay Woodcock were the ones with their pants on fire. Investigators also took the time to talk to Chad while they snooped around to find the kids. Chad claimed he barely knew Lori and said he had only met her 2 or 3 times. Remember, Scissor Sisters, they had met in October 2018, so they had known each other for a little over a year at this point. And let's not forget the little detail that they had been married for 3 weeks exactly when police paid Lori a visit for the first time. Did Chad think that this lie made him look less suspicious? Because I kind of think it makes you look more suspicious, bud. I mean, you're inside the house of a woman you claim to barely know and then skedaddle to the backyard for a frantic phone call when the police show up. That's about as suspicious as it gets. Alarm bells start going off and the hunt for the kids is officially on. Kay and Larry Woodcock offer a $20,000 reward for the safe return of JJ. The Woodcocks weren't particularly concerned about Tylee, but they at least included her as part of their hunt for JJ because, they were decent. Thanks to the ripple effect of the Johnny Gosch bill, which we covered in episode 12, Local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies were able to get involved immediately. Billboards with Ty Lee's and JJ's missing posters spread across the West Coast. And, thanks to the hard work of East Idaho News journalist Nate Eaton, the story soon spread across the nation. Nate Eaton, by the way, gosh, sorry, those combination of just letters there, so hard for me, I'm sorry. Nate, by the way, was able to cover the story from start to end. Cue the conspiracy theories that turned out to actually have a lot of truth to them. While Chad and Lori were busy lying to law enforcement, Alex went to visit Zulema in Gilbert, Arizona for Thanksgiving. While staying with Zulema, Alex complained that Chad and Lori had stopped taking his calls. According to Zulema, he became paranoid and irritable. On November 30th, the couple drove to Vegas for their nuptials, where Alex took Zulema's last name. And what a strange wedding night it was. After their quick chapel wedding, the newlyweds went back to their hotel room, where Alex offered his new bride a massage. Zulema thought it was weird because this was the first time in all the years she knew Alex that he offered her a massage, which is only a significant detail because Alex was a massage therapist. Apparently, the massage itself was strange. Alex laid plastic sheets, the type you'd lay down to paint. He laid those on the bed, claiming it was to keep the oils from ruining the hotel linens. Zulema laid down and said she remembered feeling relaxed, but in the wrong way. She described it as being asleep, knowing you're asleep, and trying to wake up, but you just can't quite get there. She fought to stay conscious and caught little pieces of conversation during her brief lucid moments. Alex was in the bathroom, on the phone with someone, having an absolute freak out. After the phone call, Alex was unusually quiet. For once, the wannabe stand-up comedian didn't have any quips to offer. Zulema believes that her wedding night was meant to be her last night alive. Towards the beginning of December, Chad and Lori take another trip to Hawaii, which is definitely a bad look when your kids are declared missing just a week prior. While everyone else had their own things going on, the FBI was busy combing Yellowstone National Park for any trace of Ty Lee. The public was encouraged to submit any photos they took at Yellowstone to the park rangers and Idaho FBI, just in case there were any signs of the teen girl in somebody else's photos. Because no one was sure if Ty Lee left the park alive, law enforcement heavily focused their search in Yellowstone. Had she been pushed into one of the steam geysers and burned? Had she been let off trail and her body disposed of, thrown in a geyser, left in the wildlands, thrown down a river? No one knew what happened, and that's why they concentrated their search there. While our lovebirds are in Hawaii, newlyweds Alex and Zulema were in Arizona. According to Zulema, Alex started acting strange, becoming more agitated and paranoid. He was in a tizzy over not being able to reach Lori. Alex made a day trip to Mexico on December 7th. He left Zulema's house feeling mostly okay, but began to feel sick by the time he arrived home that night. What do you think his trip to Mexico was for? While he recovered, Alex complained to Zulema that Lori and Chad had stopped taking his calls and texts. He kept mentioning how it wasn't fair after everything he had done for them to be ignored like this. The man was having a full-blown mental crisis, and honestly, good. He deserved the anguish. At some point, he tells Zulema, "I think I'm going to be their fall guy." Zulema didn't push for more answers and just thought it was a weird thing to say, because again, nobody fucking asked. On December 11th, 2019, the world flipped upside down for everyone close to this case. With Lori's children still missing and Chad's lie about not knowing Lori, law enforcement was able to gather enough to get a warrant to exhume Tammy's body and perform an autopsy. Chad and Lori immediately called Alex with this information. The autopsy revealed that Tammy's cause of death was asphyxiation. Now, see, what I don't understand is how they managed to pull this specific murder off. Garth Daybell was in the house at the time Tammy was killed because he's the one who heard the thud from his mother's body hitting the floor. So, unless Chad was able to sneak out a window or run to a bathroom or hide in a closet or something before his son got there, there's kinda no way Garth didn't suspect something, right? Mom and Dad are alone in a room together and Mom suddenly drops dead and Dad is just there and not reacting? Garth Daybell didn't know Tammy was dead until he checked for a pulse, which should have been something Chad did immediately upon seeing Tammy fall. How did this not look weird to Garth Daybell? Anyways, I think the stress of the situation finally caught up to Alex because on December 12th, 2019, Alex died at Zulema's home from a pulmonary embolism, which, ironically, is how Tammy's death was labeled before her autopsy. But that really is just a coincidence because Alex was autopsied in Arizona and Tammy was buried without one in Idaho. Alex and Zulema had been married for 12 days when he passed away. Lori, the sister Alex literally committed murder for, didn't bother to go to her brother's funeral. And the family was okay with it because they thought it was for her and the kids' safety. Unbelievable. 2 months worth of searching led nowhere. Lori and her 5th husband were still in Kauai. With basically no other option, investigators finally ordered Lori to provide proof of life for her children. The orders came on January 25th, 2020, with a deadline of 5 days. Surprisingly, Summer Shiftlet and Janice Cox spoke against Lori on this matter, saying the least she could do is take a picture of the kids in a room holding signs with their names and the date. This actually came as a shock to me with how staunchly defensive the pair was over Lori. Obviously, Lori was unable to provide proof of life, and for whatever reason, Lori wasn't in police custody 5 days later. She wasn't arrested until February 20th, 2020. She was held in Hawaii for 2 weeks before being extradited to Idaho. She was held on 3 misdemeanor and 2 felony counts for desertion and non-support of a minor. As soon as she stepped off the helicopter, Nate Eaton, the investigative journalist for East Idaho News, hounded Lori with questions about Tylee and JJ's whereabouts. When he asked if she had anything to say to the citizens looking for her kids and praying for her, all she had to say was, "That's good," which obviously infuriated Nate. It pissed me off when I heard it too. Chad returned to the mainland shortly after Lori's arrest. The next several months were quiet, but not without work. Lori remained behind bars, and she and Chad conversed often. But on June 9th, 2020, Lori got a very different call from Chad. Rexburg police, Fremont County sheriffs, and the FBI arrived at Chad Daybell's house to search the property. With Lori behind bars, investigators now had cause to go through phone and email records, and the story in all its glory began to unfold. Chad informed her that his property was being searched. Lori seemed unbothered and asked for an update later. Obviously, the bodies of the children were found in Chad's backyard. Tylee's remains were found first. In a panic, Chad jumped into his SUV and tried to bolt. He didn't make it more than a few blocks before law enforcement snatched him up, though. Because they were able to pull Lori's, Chad's, and Alex's phone records, they were able to get a rough idea of where Tylee and maybe even JJ might be. The day that Lori visited Yellowstone, Chad had made a search on his phone about the wind direction in Rexburg. The following morning, Alex's phone GPS put him in Chad's backyard for approximately 2 hours that day. Chad had texted his wife, which would still have been September 9th, by the way, that he had to shoot a raccoon in the backyard and that he had buried it in the family's pet cemetery. Tylee's body was in bad shape when it was brought into the coroner's office. It took about a week to finish her examination. Tylee's body arrived in 3 bags containing her head, bone fragments, and a few organs. Her bones and head showed obvious signs of being burned. While the pathologist who examined Tylee noted that she had some chronic health issues like PCOS, nothing that she had would have contributed to her death. Dr. Garth Warren, the pathologist, had her bones cleaned and sent to a forensic anthropology lab in the FBI. The anthropologist received over 100 bone fragments with each major bone group represented, which really just means that they had enough of her bones to check for abnormalities that could indicate foul play. The only thing of note on Tylee's body was the extensive burning on the left side of her head compared to the right, and blows to the pelvic region with a sharp object. The forensic anthropologist was unable to determine the cause of death as well. It's believed that Alex and Chad had attempted to burn Tylee's body, attempted to cut the body into smaller pieces when it wasn't burning quick enough, and eventually just buried her instead. To this day, nobody knows if Tylee left Yellowstone alive. These discoveries weren't for naught, though. There was a pickaxe found in Chad's shed that had Tylee's DNA on it. JJ's body was in somewhat better shape. The poor 7-year-old was found with his wrists, hands, and mouth wrapped tightly with duct tape. A plastic bag had also been wrapped around his head and sealed with duct tape. He was still wearing the red pajamas that Melanie Gibb and David Warwick had seen him in on September 22nd, 2019. A small cut was found on his cheek, presumably from tearing through a previous plastic bag used to suffocate him, and trace levels of GHB was found in his liver. The coroner was unable to say if the sedative was given before the boy was murdered or if his liver produced it on its own during decomp, which, by the way, is not a thing I knew the liver could do, so that was a fun little fact that I learned. Regardless, JJ's cause of death was ruled as asphyxiation, just like Tammy. If I were a gambling man, I'd say that Tylee's cause of death was asphyxiation too. I'm just saying a pattern is emerging here. The ones closest to the family get strangled, and the others get shot. After Chad's arrest, the coverage of the case went quiet while law enforcement found more puzzle pieces and the legal teams built their arguments. The only thing of note is the passing of the rapture. Lori believed the world was set to end on July 22nd, 2020, and here we are, 5.5 years later. Guys, I think we missed the rapture. In May 2021, Chad and Lori were officially charged. The state of Idaho charged Lori with 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Tylee and JJ. Chad was charged with 3 counts of murder, 1 for each of Lori's minor children and 1 for the murder of Tammy Daybell. The following month, Chad Daybell was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Lori, however, was deemed too mentally incompetent to stand trial. Her time in psychiatric care, though, didn't stop the courts from adding conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft to her charges. FBI agent Douglas Hart had been reading the messages and emails between the 2 lovers and had reason to suspect Lori planned Charles's death. And like I said in the first episode, hats off to Agent Hart, because just the snippets I read made me want to bleach my brain. So kudos to him. In August of 2021, the prosecution team announced that they would be seeking the death penalty against Chad. His children did an exclusive interview with 48 hours after this announcement, stating that they believed their father had been framed and was fully innocent. They claimed the man who raised them would never do something like this. One of his daughters went so far as to say that he left the decision on whether or not Tammy should receive an autopsy up to them, which isn't something a guilty man would do. The Daybell children allege that their mother had been in poor health when she died, and that's why they didn't pursue an autopsy. But again, Tammy's friends and co-workers claimed she was training for a marathon at the time. On April 11th, 2022, Lori Vallow Daybell was deemed fit to stand trial. Her arraignment took place on April 19th, and she refused to enter a plea. The judge who presided over the case, Stephen Boyce, entered a plea of not guilty on Lori's behalf. On August 16th, 2022, Lori's defense attorney asked the judge to drop the conspiracy to commit murder charges, claiming it was too confusing for the jury. Judge Boyce denied the request. On September 23rd, 2022, Judge Boyce made the decision to not allow any photos, videos, or other recording devices in the courtrooms. His reasoning was that if too much information about the case was released before the end of the trial, then the result would be an impartial jury. And I think this was the right call. Chad and Lori's attorneys requested that both teams, defendants included, be allowed to meet face-to-face to discuss tactics and strategies for their trials. The judge denied the request. The attorneys then requested that they be allowed to have a conference call together. Judge Boyce denied that request as well on January 7th, 2023. Lori, the crafty crone that she is, managed to weasel her way out of the death penalty. When she was released from psychiatric care, Lori was sent to prison and held in a cell block that housed other women awaiting a death penalty trial. After talking to some of the women there, Lori decided to invoke her right to a speedy trial. By opting for a speedy trial, she reduced the time the legal teams had to review the evidence against her, thus forcing them to drop the death penalty because they just didn't have time to build a strong enough case. Judge Boyce was now forced to have Chad and Lori tried separately. In April 2023, the trial process was finally underway. Jury selection for Lori's trial began on April 3rd. Over 1,800 people were called in to be interviewed for this case, which involved a 20-page questionnaire. Both defense and prosecuting attorneys wanted to be thoroughly sure that they had an unbiased jury. A week later, opening statements were made, officially kicking off the trial. Just over a month later, Lori's trial came to a close. On May 12th, 2023, Lori was charged with 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of murder, and 1 count of grand theft for stealing JJ's disability payments. She was sentenced on July 31st, 2023, to life without the possibility of parole, plus 10 years for grand theft, and a $50,000 fine in reparations to the families. Her trials aren't quite over yet, though. In December 2023, she would be extradited to Arizona to stand trial for Charles's murder and the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Her arraignment for her crimes in Arizona started on December 7th, 2023. Her sentencing for these crimes is still about 2 years out from that date. In June 2023, the courts scheduled Chad's trial to begin on April 1st, 2024. By May 30th, 2024, he had been charged with 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder and 3 counts of murder. The state of Idaho gave him the death penalty on June 1st, and Chad was emotionless as the verdict was read out. I think he knew from the beginning what his fate would be and had numbed himself out to the reality by the time he was sentenced. Technically, Chad could still appeal his verdict, but it would have to be on the grounds of a bad trial and not for anything else. He was 55 when he was sentenced, so I hope his next 20 years or so aren't so fun for him. Lori stood trial in Arizona for the rest of her crimes on March 31st, 2025. Lori made the dumb decision to represent herself this time around, which is like legal and all, but still a very stupid choice. The prosecution was really pushing for the death penalty for her case, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. She was found guilty on April 22nd, 2025, with her sentencing being scheduled for July 25th, 2025. She received 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Very recent, huh? After her trial in prison, Lori was required to be extradited back to Idaho to serve all of her sentences, none concurrent, by the way, and with no credit for time served. And that's all she wrote. July 25th, 2025 officially marked the end of the Lori Vallow Doomsday Zombie Mom case. I hope the voices in her head keep her company in prison. And that, my scissor sisters, concludes the story of Lori Vallow, the Doomsday Zombie Mom. How do you think she justified killing her children after her predicted doomsday had passed? How do you think she justifies it to herself now? Do you think she does it all? I don't know. I think she was probably always schizophrenic. On today's episode, I managed to finish the front panel, both legs, and start the second panel. So this was a pretty productive episode, for me at least. Next week we'll just continue sewing, I suppose. Thank you so much for watching, Scissor Sisters. I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate your support. Thank you so much to Rob from Timeless Mysteries for collaborating with me. I had a blast. Be sure to check out my TikTok for more content in between full-length episodes. And don't forget to choose kindness where you can, because you never know how it can change someone's life. Pardon my crafty pets that keep just walking through my work area. All right, be kind, stay safe, make good choices. Bye.